Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Welcome to the Sex Podcast episode. Welcome. I hope you liked that little jingle. I did it just for you. I'm really excited about today's episode. It is going to be sex on illegal substances or legal substances, but sex under the influence nonetheless. I'm so excited. Again, it's me, your host, Mariel, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, so excited to be here, so amped, so jazzed. I am trying not to contain myself. I'm really trying not to. I'm trying to just let it all out, just get it all out. I have a big old glass of red wine next to me. I've had a long day, and I'm so freaking excited to share with you guys about my research and what I've done. I'm so excited. It's going to be you and me. It's going to be you and me, or you and me and one of your buddies, or you and me and a group of friends, or you and me and your mom. I don't care. I'm just happy to be in your ears right now. So excited. So happy. Individuals 21 and over, we all know, we love a glass of wine. We love some CBD oil or some CBD gummies. We like some cannabis to unwind, or even to get us in the mood. I know. It may be a foreign topic to some of you who just like very uninhibited sex, just very like, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Really nothing wrong with that. But for those, again, individuals who are above the 21 year limit, we love experimenting with what that means. And we all have stories about us and our substances and having sex. Everyone has one. Except for those of you who choose not to partake in substances, which is, again, perfectly fine. You do not have those stories, but that's okay, because you're going to listen to some today. You're going to listen to some and engage with some. We got a lot lined up for you. I'm going to talk about what sex under the influence means. Why does it happen? What do you do? Like, what kind of drugs are there? Illegal and legal, the classifications of those, the history behind it. We're going to talk about specific stories. We're also going to talk about, like, what some people wouldn't necessarily view as a drug. I know that there was a lot of back and forth in the community about, the macaru, which I had talked about last week in my episode about aphrodisiacs. I know that a lot of people don't consider that a drug, but in my research, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I think that anything besides food can be a drug. Anything that fuels your body or really gives your body a kind of physical or an emotional response, that's a drug. Chocolate. Let's take chocolate for example. Chocolate is known to be extremely beneficial for your dopamine levels. So really rising up your dopamine if you have, if you're dopamine deficient, or if you just have a normal dopamine and you want some more dopamine, then chocolate will heighten that. So that could be a drug. Let's get into it. Let's talk about sex under the influence, baby. It's ugly. Disclaimer. I would like to have a disclaimer before I really dive into this. So a lot of these are consensual sex stories. and consensual. Everything's consensual here. That's like, consent is key. We hopefully we all know this. Hopefully. These are individuals who have been taking substances and having sex for a long time. So individuals whose case studies they'll talk about, or individuals who will be part of an explanation of, why drugs are good for sex, why drugs are bad for sex. All of them have their own experiences. They all have their own years with sex on drugs. So I just want to preface that. And also, I don't recommend going out and doing it. I really don't. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend talking to your doctor before trying any legal substances, and also illegal too. Do your own research. I know that there's not a lot of case studies and practices when it comes to illegal substances because they are illegal, but for those who have done it, look it up. It's a quick Google search. I just want to preface that before we go into anything, just because I don't want to seem like I'm encouraging this or discouraging this. I just want to be a very medium person. I just want to be a very not for nor against, just kind of in the middle, just kind of in the middle. But anyways, what are drugs? What the hell are drugs? Drugs are defined as a substance used as a medication in the preparation of a medication, or it is also classified as a substance other than food intended to affect the structure of a function of the body, psychological and physical. Kind of like what I was talking about, anything can be a drug. In this definition, anything could be a drug except food. Well, the chocolate's food. So I'll take that back. Maybe chocolate isn't a drug. I personally think that a drug is something that affects your body, both psychologically and physically, maybe emotionally too. Anything that you really ingest inside of your body, whether it's snorting, whether it's injection, whether it's suppository in your anus, whether it's through your mouth, through your eyes, I have no idea. Any way you want to put it in your body, if it's in your body and it's causing changes, I think it's a drug. That's just me though. That's just me. But what's interesting, what I learned today was the categorization of drugs. And today I will be categorizing them into terms of effect, which is kind of how the FDA categorizes drugs, but also they have a long list of drugs. So I'm just going to categorize them in how the FDA and how other people have classified them as, just a quick little thing. Uppers, downers, inhalants, and hallucinogens. So depressants are downers. Alcohol, opioids, barbiturates. Barbiturates are like a fancy way to say painkillers. This is what I learned. Stimulants, uppers. Those can be Adderall, meth, cocaine. Hallucinogens. Those can be shrooms, PCP, LSD. Inhalants can be paint thinners, gasoline, nail polish remover, and poppers. Love poppers. We'll get into those. I mean, I've never tried poppers, but I love it for the gay community because it has a lot of benefits. So with all this being said, there are legal drugs and there are illegal drugs. I think we all know the difference between illegal and legal drugs, but I will also give a definition of that too because that's also important. We will be talking about both in terms of sex, but it's important to note, let's talk about uppers first. They can create alertness and energy within the mind and body. They increase the levels of dopamine in your brain, and they can also increase the blood pressure and heart rate. Whereas a downer, depressant, they can work by inhibiting the central nervous system, slowing the heart rate, the respiratory, the gastrointestinal system. That's a lot. I just want to give a little quick drug lesson to really clarify what we're all talking about here. So what does this all mean to sex though? Legal drugs have a very interesting effect on an individual having sex for again, a variety of reasons. It can help ease the tension, both physically and emotionally. It can create a whole new sexual experience for the both of you. And it can kind of give a new perspective on your body and how it relates to sex. It can feel better, but it can also push boundaries for you if that's something that you want. One of the most common uppers and inhalants on the market for queer individuals are poppers. These babies are a group of chemicals named isopropyl nitrate, and they're sold in small liquid bottles to be inhaled, obviously, because you pop them into your body. Fun how that works, isn't it? Basically, what they're doing is they're opening blood vessels, increasing blood flow, and oftentimes reducing your blood pressure, also while increasing your heart rate. It's like they get a head rush when they use it. Gays and queers alike use it for anal play a lot. And they also use it as a general body high feeling when getting kind of intimate. The next is alcohol. Alcohol has a long history, as we know. It's been there since the beginning of time. It's more specifically known or more scientifically known as ethanol. But what it can do during sex is something different than how we would normally use it on a night out. Alcohol interferes with the brain's communication pathway and can affect the way that the brain looks and works. Hence, beer goggles. You guys have heard of beer goggles, right? It's a common joke amongst men, taking home a not so good looking woman to them, and in the morning waking up and being like, oh my god, what did I do? She's such a 2. Oh my god, I thought I took home a 9. It's like, shut up, whatever. But anyways, it happens it happens more than you think. You get what's kind of known as beer goggles, where you think you think it's something else, you know? It can decrease your motor functions, and it can also decrease your anxiety. These are depressants. This is for sure a depressant. So the next thing, because we're getting into a list of what's legal, what are legal drugs that people use for sex? Sex drive pills that you can find in a drugstore. We all know what they look like. They have like rhinos on them, or like some man on top of a woman. And we see them in 7-Eleven, or we see them at a drugstore, or we even see them at like, you know, your local liquor store. And you're like, should I even take them? Should I even look at this? Should I even be looking at this right now? This feels like super... Are they selling these? Like, how are they even selling these? That is really funny. Because I oftentimes look at them and I'm like, is this legal to sell? And I can assure you that they are perfectly legal to sell. And the reason being is that they're just packed with vitamins. Packed with them. So they're filled with maca powder, which I had talked about in my aphrodisiac episode. They are filled with ashwagandha powder, CDP, chlorine, horny goatweed, extract, tribulus extract, yohimbe extract, and tyrosine. These are legal drugs you can get anywhere. They're like a super compact pill that gives you what you need for sex. But it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said in the aphrodisiac episode, this baby takes over 8 weeks to help anything. It increases your libido, your stamina. However, it also won't work for everybody, but these are legal drugs, I promise. The next one is kind of what we know as like a staple for drugs, for like sex under the influence, but not necessarily for the way that you think. Sex on Viagra. This is more common than you think. A lot of men with erectile dysfunction or problems in the bedroom use Viagra. It's readily available. You can get a prescription for it pretty easily. And now I have a couple funny stories about it at the end of the episode. But this is classified as a drug. sex under the influence. It may not be inhibiting your partner's, motor skills and senses, but it does increase your blood pressure. It increases your blood to your penis. I mean, it's a drug. It's known as sildenafil citrate. It works by blocking the action of an enzyme called PDE5. This enzyme is meant to break down another enzyme called CHMP, which relaxes the smooth muscle of a penis. It allows for blood to flow smoothly to then cause an erection. It's like an unblocker for your penis. That makes it really work is that it only acts when men are aroused. And only on the penis, because the PDE5 enzyme is specific to the penis. It works amazingly for great sex with men, and it has a lot of success stories because it is a drug, and it does what drugs do. It physically impacts the body. It does have negative side effects, like it can you can have an erection for 4 hours. That is a huge side effect, and it can happen, but it increases that kind of blood flow. So here is another one. Nitric oxide, a popular drug for athletes to use when working out, and also honestly for sex. It's formed from nitrogen and oxygen by the action of electric sparks or high temperature. Its role is dilating blood vessels, which is an important controller of blood pressure, and increases the blood flow through the vessels. This drug has also been used to treat erectile dysfunction, believe it or not. The nitric oxide released within the penis relaxes and smooths the muscle cells of the penis. So, in essence, it is used for stamina, it's used for arousal, it is used for erectile dysfunction, it's used for athletes. It's kind of like a lot of people call it like a miracle drug. I just think it's really interesting. The research that I've done about it show that a lot of people really do like this to the alternative that is Viagra for erectile dysfunction. Also, athletes do use this to get them in the gym longer, to make them work harder and get less tired, I should say. So the next one is weed, cannabis. We all know it. Not all of us love it, but we all know it. So cannabis works when the THC passes through your lungs to the rest of your body. If you are smoking it, that is. It acts on specific brain cell receptors that ordinarily react to natural THC-like chemicals. These natural chemicals play a role in the normal brain function: memory, pleasure, coordination, time perception. They attach to the cannabinoid receptors and activate them. Sex with weed can be pleasurable for multiple reasons, really. You can have a heightened sensitivity. It can relax your body. It can leave you with intense orgasms, but it can also give you vaginal dryness. I know that when I used to smoke weed, that's kind of what would happen in my body, was that I would have just a really dry vagina. Obviously a dry mouth, but a dry vagina, and I did not like that. And if not dosed correctly, it can make you super sleepy or super paranoid. I've had a lot of experience with cannabis, but again, this is the specific makeup of my body. When I was 21, when I got a card to get cannabis, I didn't have great experiences on weed, especially sex on weed. It just wasn't pleasurable for me, but I know that a lot of other people really enjoy it. My partner actually does enjoy sex while she's taken weed, while she's smoked weed and ingested it in some kind of way. She enjoys that because it works best for her body, because her body likes it. Her body can handle it. My body, on the other hand, not gonna happen. So that was a lot. That was a lot of like what the actual technical term of like a lot of those drugs are, the legal drugs. Those were just some of them though. I know for a fact that there are a lot more out there that are more legal. A lot of them can be classified as aphrodisiacs. I think that they're drugs. I know that I made an entire aphrodisiac episode about it. But I think that a lot of what we use as aphrodisiacs, like in terms of specifically ingesting your body to feel a certain way, I think they're drugs. Whether it's a hard drug or whether it's a soft drug. After the break, we're going to talk about illegal drugs and its effect on sex. We're going to talk about meth. We're going to talk about MDMA and ecstasy. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. So please stick around. And then at the very end of the episode, I have really funny stories for you about sex under the influence, and you're not going to want to miss them. So stay tuned. Get a snack. Get some wine even. I don't even know. How do you like to unwind? Do it. Unwind. Come back feeling refreshed. And let's get into it.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for coming back, from sticking in, tuning in to the Sex Podcast episode of Sex Under the Influence of Drugs, Illegal and Legal. I'm very excited for you to come back. We have so much more to talk about, so much more to dive into, and I'm so happy you're here. I hope you got some wine, maybe a vodka soda, maybe a little bit of gin and tonic. Maybe you got something special, you know? Maybe you got like some edibles if you're 21 and over. I always have to put a disclaimer on that. So let's get into it. Again, I'm also going to put another disclaimer for these illegal drugs. Illegal drugs are harmful to your body. Illegal drugs are harmful to your body. They can cause trauma to your brain. They can also blur the lines between consensual sex and sexual assault. When you can snap out of being on drugs like meth or LSD and you're in a sexual situation that is super, super dangerous. So it's important to know where your boundaries are and also to not try this at home. I want to make it clear that illegal substances are illegal for a reason. They're not tested as much as we would like to. I know a lot of people who have done it and they've had success on it. I've also know people that have not had success on illegal drugs. So I am not for nor against it, but I would like to say be careful. Maybe don't try it at home. Maybe just listen to this podcast, you know? But anyways, so what are the substances that people like to have sex on illegally? What do they do to your sex? Meth, crystal meth, is just one of them, as they call it. It's made up of several chemicals and toxins and house products. It's really just a flurry, really just a mess, but it's popular and it's been used. So the reasons why meth is on this list is because there is an extensive history on how queer men have used meth for sex. It's super interesting. In short, it increases the release of dopamine, the brain's pleasure sensors. It produces euphoria, increases energy, and prolongs sexual performance. It is the perfect storm in the gay scene in both history and present. Crystal meth was readily available and known for its euphoric feeling. That, coupled with the individual's internalized homophobia, societal's homophobia, it's really a recipe for disaster. And again, I say a perfect storm because it is perfectly disastrous. It really wreaked havoc on a lot of the gay communities now, presently, and also in the past as well. Because of how well it was associated to losing yourself, to living that fantasy of not being here for, just a couple minutes or an hour or so. Really being able to just kind of lose yourself a little bit, which is sad to say, but it's true. The internalized homophobia of oneself and also the society has definitely plagued the gay community with drugs and with a lot of self-hatred. So there's that fun thing. But I will say that I've had friends who've had experiences using meth in small dosages to kind of perfect and get to their peak of sexual involvement with another person, and they themselves find it extremely pleasurable. It's incredibly easy to achieve an orgasm on meth because of how much dopamine it fills your brain with, because of how free you feel, Obviously then you feel immediately shitty, like, maybe like an hour after, but it's one of those drugs that are definitely used for sex. Definitely used for sex. The other drug that I'll talk about is super common for a lot of straight couples, but also queer individuals, but it's not as, it's basically the straight drug, which is ecstasy. I know a lot of queer individuals use ecstasy, but in terms of its history, ecstasy is definitely one for the books. It is the most common illegal drug for individuals because of the party scene and how it also makes you feel. There's also a stigma that is attached to each and every single illegal drug that I talk about. When when a partner presents to you, oh, hey, I got this new drug, like, let's try it. It's meth. You're going to be like, what the hell? No. But when someone gives you ecstasy, something that is associated with the Hollywood elite, people that, a lot of rich individuals use them to feel good, and it's associated with Coachella and wild parties. It's not necessarily associated with poverty or being a homosexual closeted in the 90s or, early 2000s. So it's really about, it's about, yes, the history, yes, what it kind of means, but also how it makes you feel. So there's a lot of history behind it, but it's common knowledge that among the recreational drug users, to not have sex on ecstasy. Don't do it, because you'll never achieve a better orgasm. You'll never feel the same way that you once did when you had ecstasy for the first time and were engaging in sexual intercourse. You'll never feel the same way. It is common for people who are drug users, like regular recreational drug users, but also people who have been around the block before and know the thing or two, to not use ecstasy and have sex, because you'll never have a better experience. But nonetheless, it is the most popular drug for sexual intercourse because of how it makes you feel. Mdma, which is ecstasy, is a specific term for E. E is like, ecstasy is like a, street name. Mdma is like the scientific version, the scientific name of it. It has a super powerful effect on the brain. It produces an increase of dopamine, serotonin, which affect your mood and appetite, and can also make you incredibly horny. You just want to touch people. You want to feel people. You want to feel their essence. It's like insane. That's what people have said to me, that's like it's such an intense drug for that. Users who report having sex on MDMA feel like an intense orgasm on the drug at all points of time. It's like one big intense orgasm. However, afterwards, it makes having sex incomparable without the drug present. So I have a super hilarious story. My partner was talking to her coworker about her time on MDMA at a music festival. She's also straight, by the way. And it was so funny because her coworker said that her and her partner went to this festival together, and they've only been dating for a few months. They take MDMA at the start of the festival, and throughout these 3 days of, taking drugs together, being in close quarters together, partying together, really living up the life, they fell madly in love with each other. And now they have 2 kids and are married. That's where they fell in love. That's their love story, was that they just fell madly in love while they were taking ecstasy at, one of the raves that were, it's just so funny. Cause it's true. It's a very powerful drug. And again, the next powerful drug is shrooms. Oh my God. These babies are insane when it comes to psychedelics. These are psychedelics. And also, just to clarify, MDMA, that is an upper. Meth, that would also be considered an upper because it makes you feel this intense dopamine feeling. And shrooms, psychedelic. They are psychedelics. So they're called Psilocybin mushrooms. Again, not to be confused with shiitake mushrooms, which have no psilocybin in it. The difference between a regular mushroom and a magic mushroom is the psilocybin that is in the mushroom, that powerful chemical that is in them. They have an active chemical called psilocin, which have an immediate effect on increasing your serotonin and have an intense hallucinogen. It works by activating your serotonin receptors. A lot of it's all chemical. It's all a chemical reaction in your body. A lot of individuals like to have sex on this drug due to it affecting your mood, your cognition, your perception. You could be having sex with a tiger and, your girlfriend's a tiger now. I'm sure that's not exactly how it works, but for some individuals where it really affects what they see and what they're seeing around them, it could be intense. It can be intense having sex on this kind of drug. Honestly, uppers in general increase your stamina, just like shrooms would. But it really plays with the euphoria and the peacefulness that you feel. So not only can it create stamina, but more importantly, it's for a euphoric feeling. It's for feeling peaceful. And also it can get you incredibly wet. My partner, who uses shrooms, microdoses, does all this fun stuff. Again, it's so funny because we're two opposite people. I don't want anything to do with drugs. I am very straight edge when it comes to that. Again, I love alcohol, but I am so scared of drugs. And she's literally the opposite. She's like, I hate alcohol. I can never do alcohol, but give me all the drugs. Give me all of your drugs. It's so funny because we complement each other very well with that. But she was taking shrooms one day and she was like, I really want to have sex with you. And I said, abso-freaking-lutely, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. And she was just incredibly wet. That was one of the things that I noticed because she's taken it multiple times around me. She's incredibly wet when that happens, when she takes shrooms. It's just an immediate reaction that a lot of people get. They just become incredibly stimulated. And again, just to reiterate, people who used illegal substances did their own research. She did their own research. I've done my own research. They took their time to figure out if it was best for them. And I'm using drugs, at your own risk to reach enlightenment or to reach sexual clarity, but not when you're young. I want to emphasize that. Not when you're young. Your brain is still developing. I do not recommend it. I don't want you to do it. I really don't want you to do it when you're young and your brain is developing. And you also need to know your limits as well. Again, I love to reiterate this. Know your limits. Know where your body's at. Do your own research. Drugs are powerful and can cause a lot of damage, but can be also super enlightening and super beautiful to a good amount of people or to people in general. It can be super enlightening. And having sex on drugs, it can be super, super enlightening. My partner was just telling me about how one of her cousins went on a grinder hookup a couple months ago before the pandemic. He was, going on Grindr to look for some penis action, was, engaging in that. They talked about using poppers, but the guy was like, do you want to try meth? And of course, he was 21 at the time. And he was like, listen, I've never tried meth and I don't necessarily know what's in it. I don't know what's around it, but sure, F it, let's do it. And so they tried it. Supposedly it was amazing. He really enjoyed it. It really opened up his anus. I'll say it. It does that. It has that effect. That is why it is popular in the gay community. He had the best hookup that he's ever had, but he was up for 3 days straight. He was up for 3 whole days straight. That's not good. He was losing it at day 3. It's so insane. So again, don't F with meth, man. Really don't F with it. Anyways, let's go on a break. Let's take some chow time. Let's refill your drink a little bit. And the next part, I'm going to talk about history. I'm going to talk a little bit about history. And it's going to be super interesting because you're going to realize a lot of people are freaky. We got a lot of freaky people in history. It's going to be super hot. Come back. Enjoy your time. I've got a lot of good stuff for you. And don't forget, at the end of the show, I'm going to be sharing some super funny stories. So please come back. I'll see you then.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
What is popping, you all? Poppers, popping, you get it? I get it. So the last 2 parts, let's summarize them. Let's go. So first part, we talked about legal substances, how to classify them, the uppers, the downers, the inhalants, the hallucinogens, the you name it. Those are the ones. We talked about how exactly it happens in your body, the chemistry that it is, whether it's poppers and having that euphoric feeling, the blood vessels, whether it's, alcohol, which is a legal substance. Part 2, we talked about illegal substances. We talked about meth. We talked about shrooms. We talked about Mdma. We talked about those kind of stuff and how it relates to the chemicals that are in your body, why people have sex on it, a little bit of a history behind it, more the cultural aspect behind it, but also specifically what it does to your body. And then this part, we're going to talk about the history. We're going to talk about the history of legal substances, mainly illegal substances, but also illegal substances as well, like opioids and stuff like that. So let's get into the dank history. I'm so excited to share with you what I found. A lot of research around the ancient sex and drugs of that kind were in party settings. Honestly, sex under the influence was very much a public act that influenced individuals to be free and honest and open. And it just, blame it on the alcohol. Just blame it on the alcohol, But it was a public party setting that a lot of this had to do around. So a lot of what the history that I have to show you guys is about orgies. It's a lot about orgies, and some of it, some of it's not about orgies, but a lot of it is orgies. So, something that I found really interesting was in ancient Egypt about Blue Lotus. So, Blue Lotus was extensively used for their parties, but not just any parties, orgy parties. Come on, get into it. Blue Lotus is a legal herb used for mild psychoactive effects, and when used properly, can stimulate serotonin levels and can create kind of an intoxicating effect. Blue Lotus is a flower. You can use it tea. You can crush it up and put it in your food. You can smoke it. I would suggest stimulating it with heat. That's usually how psychoactive things get psychoactive in terms of like plants and whatnot. Smoke it. Create heat with it. So it was essentially the party drug of ancient Egypt. The secret elite group of ancient Egypt would share in this wine-infused Blue Lotus concoction, and it would always involve sexual themes. You can see many, many, many murals. I went through so many, and it like burned my eyes. Murals, papyrus, and temples decorated with images of Egyptians having sex in large quantities. It's literally insane. But this drug, it's called epimorphine and nuciforine, would be classified today as a hallucinogen for its mild and tranquil euphoric feelings. So going back to that aphrodisiac, the whole argument behind that, I think it's a drug. I feel like it's a drug. If it's mild hallucinogenic and it's a euphoric and you get that kind of feeling when you're drinking it in wine or having it alone, baby, that's a drug. That is a drug. But anyways, moving on. In ancient Greece, males would attend an all-male drinking party that was an orgy in and of themselves. These parties were called the symposium and was an opportunity for men and younger men to bond in an erotically charged night. Prostitutes would be their entertainers. Wine was poured all night long, and it also led to some orgies. Ancient Greeks were known bisexuals. They were known bisexuals. So of course it would lead to orgies. That's hot, and I'd like to see that. In ancient Rome, a festival called Bacchanalia. In ancient Rome, a festival called Bacchanalia, I probably butchered that, but that's okay, was dedicated to the god of wine and was forbidden by the state. You're asking the reason why it was forbidden, even though it was a festival dedicated to the wine god? Everyone got drunk and had sex together. It was a big, fat orgy. And also, I'll say it, that's also super hot. You got a bunch of people together, a bunch of Roman, a bunch of Roman, big, bold men and women who just are so incredibly sexy, coming together, celebrating the wine god, and then having sex together? Are you serious? That's amazing. Fast forward some time when opium came to San Francisco on 1864. The opium dens were completely ignored by police for a very long time. They didn't want to go near it. They didn't want to be in it. They pretended that they did not see it. It was reported that these opium dens were filled with non-white individuals, and reported that white women looking for sexual adventure in these dens would come and enjoy themselves under the influence of opium. In 1844, Anton Ballard first created the synthesized amyl nitrate for blood pressure and heart treatment. And in 1870s, men who reported taking said medication also had an increased sexual excitement. And of course, it was popularized in the 70s by gay men during the disco era and party era. It became an over-the-counter drug within no time. It was amazing. Hence, poppers came around. More notably, this kind of drug that became legalized now got into the gay scene. We love it. In 1919, methamphetamine was first created in Japan. And it wasn't until the late 90s where it became popular among gay men for sex. There is a lot of controversy behind it all. Why were people afraid of it? However, there's a lot of controversy behind it and why people were afraid of it. It blurs the lines between consent and sexual assault. It's a downer to talk about for this topic, and it's sure not an upper. It sucks, I know, but it's what happens when you're under the influence of drugs. Lines get crossed. You're unable to consent to things when you're super high or super drunk or so deep into your psychedelic trip. It can be easy for a substance. You have jaw-dropping sex, amazing sex with your partner, or it can be also super easy to be something crossing your comfy lines into being scary or unwanted. With all that, I say it's important to check in with your partner every moment you get. Every moment. Anytime something feels wrong or off. I remember, again, my partner and I were engaging in sex with shrooms. And I made sure every single step of the way, every moment that I got before, during, after sex, that I checked in with her. At no point did I want her to feel like she couldn't have a say in anything that we did, or anything that she wanted, or anything that I wanted. That she was even forced to do anything. I wanted to make sure that I communicated that with her. And even months after she took shrooms and we had sex she had sex with me on shrooms, she still agrees that that's exactly what she wanted. I wanted to make sure and confirm with her every step of the way. There is a point where you know you shouldn't touch somebody on shrooms or on meth, on alcohol. They're closed off. They're not engaging. They don't want to look at anybody. They're curling into a ball in themselves. That's when you don't engage. That's when you stop, you pause, you halt everything right then and there, and you tend to the person and ask them if they're okay. That is super important. And a lot of, the other topic that a lot of other people bring up is that sex on legal drugs is a gateway to use illegal drugs, where sex on illegal drugs is a gateway to use bigger and more bolder illegal drugs, which I do not believe is true. Sex on drugs legally or illegally doesn't lead to a bigger or more destructive form of drugs, but it can make you have a bad time on sex. I'll say it. These are all the possibilities. I do not think that there is enough evidence shown that sex on drugs will lead you to more drugs and more powerful drugs. It's not a gateway drug. I really do not believe that if you have sex on alcohol, it's going to lead you to doing meth or doing heroin in your free time, or to want to try it bigger, bolder. It also depends on the person. I would hate to say that you can generalize people who take drugs, because you can't. Everyone's different. Everyone is different. But again, needless to say, moving forward, I want to talk about something a little bit more lighter. It's always a hard thing to talk about, consent versus sexual assault on, drugs and not being able to give your consent. It's super hard to talk about, but I want to make it a point to talk about that kind of controversial topic because it is so controversial. There's so many platforms out there that talk about, yes, it's perfectly okay to have sex with somebody when they're on drugs, whether they're consenting or not consenting. It's perfectly legal sex. It's perfectly okay sex, which I don't think is true. I think you got to check in with the person every single time a mood changes, something shifts, you shift, you got to make sure that happens. But moving forward, after the break, I'm going to finish it off with some funny stories I found on Reddit. You're going to love it. Individuals who've taken drugs and have had sex or have had sexual experiences with it, and they've had so much fun. More of that after the break. Stick around.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast episode of Sex Under the Influence, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mariel, and this is the last part of the episode, a part that I like to call story time. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, to leave a comment wherever you are watching this. It really helps us out. I promise it really does. All right, story time. So all these stories I've gotten from Reddit, the mecca, the hub of amazing stories and opinions that people have asked them to share, or no one asks them to share and they just share it. So let's get into it. This first story was posted from a site on Reddit called r/drugs. And this is r/drugs/intercourse. So this user writes, I haven't had sex many times, nor have I had many chances. I had sex 3 times between February and March of 2009, and that's all the sex I've ever had. I am 24 years old, and I haven't had a second chance ever. However, all 3 times, including losing my virginity, were done high off my butt. The best story I have is the 3rd time. A girl I met on OkCupid and whom had sex with the week before called me up sounding kind of drunk and emotional, but she basically asked me to come pick her up and to not get weird if she's acting funny. So I drive the 45 minutes to her house. That's a long ass time. That's a long time to drive to go meet somebody. That's insane. And as soon as she's inside, she's all over me. Kissing, biting, licking, grabbing, touching. She proceeds to continue in this manner while I'm driving us back to my place, 40 to 50 minutes around 2 a.m. And I'm high as hell, which is extremely illegal. Do not do this. During the drive, she performed oral sex on me, which was the first and only time I had ever had oral done to me. Eventually, she slows down and cuddles to preserve her energy and mine. We get to my place. I live at home still, and we head to my bedroom, which then proceeds to turn into a cross between a nightmare and one of those stellar pornographies where you just like, damn, yo. I turn into an animalistic beast, and we completely maul each other in every which way possible. Missionary cowgirl positions where she's spooning me while we masturbate each other, doggy style. This is kind of cool, actually. And we basically have sex until we're exhausted, make out until we have more energy, and then repeat. Neither of us actually came during those 9 hours we were having sex in total, but we didn't have to. It was so therapeutic for me. Having gone my entire life knowing that level of intimacy with another human being, having never unlocked my animal sex drive, merely being close to someone is something I desperately needed and still need, that it's possible. The day after, we didn't have sex, but rather ate a lot of food, played video games, watched movies, slept, and of course, smoked a lot of great herb. she's got a man now, and I've been single and sexless ever since. Any stoner ladies want to hang out? So that's insane. That's a great story. That's a great example of how being high on cannabis can affect the way that you have sex. It affects everybody differently. It always affects everybody differently. But this time, it kind of gave him that super, like, calming sense, but also a horny sense. It could be taken either way. It could be taken as, oh, he's just horny because she's horny, or it can be taken, yes, the drugs did in fact help him. He was under the influence while he was having sex, and it made it that much better. 9 hours is a long time. A lot of people, including myself, believe that cannabis is a depressant. It is something that slows down your heart rate. It makes you calmer, makes you, a little bit off on, not on edge. But the fact that it did literally the opposite to him is truly the power of, like, drugs and sex on drugs, I think. That's so interesting. I like that story a lot. It's a really good story. And I have another one. The next one I have for you is about Viagra. I have no clue what I said. So let me just preface this. Let me preface the story. So he basically has been talking to a bunch of doctors that are trying to prescribe him different things for his erectile dysfunction or his, like, horniness level, I guess. And he's just been taking shots in the dark with them. But this time, apparently, they gave him a Viagra prescription. So this reads, I have no clue what I said, but the fact that I had a prescription was terrifically funny to me. So anyway, I got all the other stuff dropped off at the pharmacy, and I had one single prescription that I didn't need sitting in the center console of my car for a few weeks. Whenever I was with my friends, I'd show off thinking it was hilarious. Well, one time I got curious. I might as well try it. Fast forward to the middle of a work week nearly a month later. It's Wednesday. All projects are finished. I'm off early. I decide, let's fill out that prescription. So I walk into CVS, carrying only the Viagra prescription at this point. And I walk up to the pharmacy tech. She's cute and my age. And I'm completely embarrassed. So I'm like, yeah, I'd like to fill out this prescription. I don't really need it. I'm just a lazy doctor. I promise all my stuff works. Totally making ass out of myself. Oh well, never going to see her again. And I start to walk away. She calls me back. She calls back to me. Go ahead, take a seat. Your prescription will be ready in about 5 minutes. Shit. I thought I was going to drop it off and then pick it up a few hours later. And now I'm sitting down in front of this girl, just sitting awkwardly in silence. In my head, I'm thinking, maybe small talk would make this easier. So, what are you doing after work? I ask. Needless to say, that did not go well. Lesson learned. That's funny. Ha. So I get the prescription and now it's like 4 p.m. and there's a slight problem. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I didn't want to just go home, pop a pill, and then beat it down. So I'm thinking to myself, what the heck should I do? And a little spark of brilliance flickers in my head. A stroke of genius, if you will. Strip club. So I call a bunch of friends that I showed the prescription to, saying, you guys, listen seriously. You guys, strip club? Guys, listen. Strip club. Boner. My brilliant plan is to go to the strip club, pop one, and then I think, that's as far as I thought it through. So I get the 4 friends to meet up with me at a really, really crappy local strip club. It's still pretty early in the day, maybe 7 p.m. at the latest. I'm for some reason still wearing my business clothes, dress pants, button-up shirt, tie, all that jazz, looking classy in a strip club. So anyways, we're now at the table laughing about the plan, and the waitress comes by and asks me what we want to drink. Jack and Coke, of course. She comes back with our drinks. I take a sip, I pop the pill in my mouth. Oh shit, no turning back now. It just got really real. We're all laughing now. So we're all carrying on laughing, and the waitress comes back and she's like, okay, I have to know. It's 7 p.m. You're all young and you're being way louder than the normal late night drunk. What's going on? So I fill her in, figuratively. She thinks it's hilarious. Well, a half hour goes by and I'm looking downward. I'm disappointed. Nothing's going on in my pants. That's okay, I think to myself. The doctor said it would take like an hour or so to kick in. I'm finished with the first jack, and the waitress comes back and gives me a second free just because she thought the whole scenario was ridiculous. I down that drink quickly, and it's been 45 minutes since I took the pill, and nothing. I start to get nervous. New drink. Another 15 minutes, I finish the drink as well. For those not paying attention, I'm at a strip club. I swallowed Viagra. It's been an hour, and nothing is going on in my pants. I'm thinking, crap, I broke it. Didn't I? I've also had 3 drinks at this point. I realize you probably shouldn't drink on Viagra. Whoops, maybe that's why it wasn't working. Yeah, you shouldn't have, you should not drink when you're on Viagra. I'll just say that. Don't do that. Okay, back to the story. I have to pee. So I get up and go to the bathroom. Now, I'm standing at the urinal and I put my hand against the wall. I relax and start to break the seal. It's one of those glorious 30-second pisses. So good. You have a cold chill and all is beautiful in the world. I shake it and then bam! Catalyst is set off. Full throttle. Now I have a bit of unusual problem here. I can't get it back in my pants. It's fully sported and I'm struggling to get it back properly into my underwear and a tight dress pant. It's like a reverse cage match between me and my penis. I fully wrangle that sucker back in there, winning that belt. I celebrate a brief victory. See what I did there? But then I realize I've been in the bathroom for now 5 minutes and I'm still hard. I've been in the bathroom forever, coming out with an erection. Crap. I panic for a second. This is going to look so perverted, like I was masturbating in the strip club. But then I think to myself, isn't that the freaking point? So I embrace it, the situation I mean, and I just decide to play it forward, my penis I mean. I reach into my pants and adjust it forward. There's no hiding my shame now. I open the door of the bathroom to go back to the seats, leading the way with my friend. His penis, he means. I get back to the seats and pull my leg up, Captain Morgan style. It's a pose of confidence, but my friends at the table will tell you it was a bit too cocky. At this point, holy crap, my friends were laughing their asses off. The waitress was laughing her ass off. The strippers on the stage stopped dancing, wondering what the heck was going on. Mission accomplished. We stay at the club for longer, and now everyone is buying me drinks. Everyone. Freebies all around. I get pretty drunk. It goes away, and we all end our fanciful night at the club. The story is winding down at this point. I find myself at home laying in bed, and I'm laying there peacefully on my back. The room is spinning. I notice my throat is slowly starting to burn a little bit. I've got acid reflux. Ugh. Easiest solution though, I just flip over and lay on my stomach. Bad decision. Tremors 2. Aftershock. Bam. It's like laying on a car jack. Just slowly start lifting up. He's talking about his erect penis, by the way. I return to laying on my back. Acid reflux again. Worse this time. Feels like I'm gonna puke acid. I run to the bathroom, sporting a massive erection, and start vomiting. I've never done that before. Thankfully, I didn't have any roommates at the time to accidentally walk in on me. That would have been a tough story to explain. That is absolutely hilarious. I thought you guys would absolutely enjoy that one. Wow, we talked about a lot of stuff today. A lot of drugs, lots of sex. So much history behind drugs and sex together, both good and bad. We can't deny that it plays a vital part in a lot of people's sex lives. Whether it's illegal or legal drugs, sex under the influence isn't talked about enough in the media, but it's important to remember that sex on drugs can easily be used as a weapon of sexual assault. We're talking advance. What can you do is come in with the intent of having sex on drugs and checking in with each other each step of the way to make sure everything is okay. Communication is 100% key on drugs. Not just verbal, but body language. If something doesn't feel right, stop. Give it some rest. Check in. Consensual sex is the best sex. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I appreciate it. I would love to hear what you guys think about this episode. Please leave it in the comments. As always, I'm your host, Mariel. I don't have a great outro, but until next time, the GSMC Sex Podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all things podcast related. Thank you and have a great night. I'll see you guys and talk to you guys soon. Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.